David Fowley of Keeping It Real, before we started recording, you said one of these days we're going to talk about a movie that I actually like.
We
Today is not that day, but well, look, the thing is the other two, because this is our trifecta, I
okay,
think,
okay.
recently,
I hope
I
so.
have not liked and you've been a fan of.
Okay,
But
yeah.
here's the thing: we are 0 for 3, but this time we agree. Um,
Mm,
I think.
mhm. Yeah. No, we do.
I'm going to start off with a question.
Okay.
What happened to Neil Marshall?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you and I, we're both fans of Dog Soldiers. I really like. I don't know how you feel about The Descent. I loved it. Um,
I hated it the first time I saw it, but
mhm.
then I rewatched it a couple of years ago, I think, for the anniversary or
Okay,
something. Um, or maybe just because I'd watched Dog Soldiers and I wanted to follow up. And
sure.
I appreciate it a lot
Yeah.
more now.
Um,
I don't think because that was my first Neil Marshall film, and I was like, it's so
mm,
dark because I think I might just see it in a crappy theater or something, because watching it on Blu-ray, you can totally see everything that you're
right,
supposed to see. But
right.
yeah.
And I will defend Doomsday. I had a blast with that movie. It was just kind of like his own George Miller type movie. Kind of like a post-apocalyptic pandemic, Mad Max type of feel. And Centurion, the period piece with Michael Fassbender, I really liked. But and so I'm not going to say that he like took a nosedive with Hellboy. The Hellboy with David Harbour wasn't that great. Um, he spent some time doing TV work, but I, I don't know, man. I don't know the answer to your question.
I do, and it comes back to a theme that I've been working through the last couple of weeks, watching the Rocky films.
Okay.
Um, Neil Marshall needs to get back the eye of the tiger. Um,
He needs a good montage.
something I had forgotten that he did the Hellboy thing with Harbor, man.
Yeah.
But okay, so Duchess is the movie we're here to talk about. It's on digital today. It came out in the UK last week, but
Hmm.
as of
Hmm.
August 12th, it's available on demand. Um, and it is what I like to call the Junior Action Filmmakers Workshop, because it is all the cliches you've ever seen in every bad modern action movie rolled up into one, minus any of the thrills or excitement or investment in characters, plot, etc.
Yep.
It was so dispiriting watching this film, that I don't know. It's help me out here, David.
I don't know how I can help you. I'm sorry. Um, um what I I'm wondering if Neil Marshall has clo- a he has a working relationship with Charlotte Kirk, who plays Duchess,
Hmm.
Scarlet, aka Duchess, in this movie. I'm wondering if that goes beyond a working relationship. This is the third movie he's done with her. Like he did another movie called The Reckoning, which is supposedly where she's a witch. And then another movie called The Lair. So I'm surprised this movie wasn't called The Duchess, since that would be three the movies. But this is just called Duchess. Um, and she plays kind of like a petty criminal in the UK, this modern day, working class criminal, I guess, um, working in the British underworld. I don't know. It doesn't really say how it's not really established like how accomplished she is as a criminal. Um, she's working it, and I, I think what the movie did is it lost me right away with the kind of like self-aware narration that really bugs me. Like that doesn't work very well in a lot of movies.
I think it did. I mean, at one point, I think the problem is this movie is like, it tries to be a Guy Ritchie film. It's got the let's freeze frame on every character introduction and give like a rock riff and a
Mm-hmm.
funky title card and that, wry narration like you'd see in Suicide Squad, which was probably also in some ways ripping off Guy Ritchie. It has that it feels like something that would have been cool 20 years ago if or 25 years ago at this point, whatever, if Guy Ritchie hadn't made Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and
Right.
Snatch.
Right.
It feels so derivative down to, I mean, when I say cliches, I don't know if you picked up on this, but it goes beyond tough guy underworld dialogue into literal. There was an entire scene. It was the exchange between Duchess, where she goes to see her father, played by Colm Meaney,
Mm-hmm.
he's a criminal who's been locked up in jail for life or something. He goes to visit her, and their entire 3-minute scene. I started writing it down because I was in disbelief. All of the dialogue is cliche. Here's the exchange. They sit down together at the table, and she opens her mouth, and he says, "It speaks." And then he starts smoking, and she says, "Those things will kill you. You should be so lucky. What the fuck did mom see in you? I had my moments, still do from time to time.
Wow.
Jesus. Doesn't pay to dwell on the past, and here, down that road leads madness. What's done is done, can't be undone.
Wow. Yeah, it just
If you
sounds like
came, wait, no, hold on a second. If you come near us again, I'll fucking kill you. That's my girl. End scene. It was like watching a game.
very
Like,
heartfelt.
right. Yeah, sure. But it's almost like, okay, we're still trying to figure out these characters. We're just gonna put in some temp dialogue and run through the scene, but they filmed it and mistakenly left that bit in. But there's so much more that I stopped. I kept pausing. This movie took like 2.5 hours to watch, even though it's only just under 2 hours, because I kept pausing to write down more things in utter disbelief. It's one of those bizarre action movie train wrecks where the camera is moving faster than the action. And this is no slight on the fact that there's a lot of kind of older gentlemen doing action scenes, but there's a really awkward shootout in a parking garage early on where they're like ducking behind columns and like doing kind of slow rollovers to hide behind cars. I'm like, what is going on here? These people would have been dead.
I have no idea why that daughter dad scene was in the movie. It's not like she got like really any information from him. Um eh, whatever. Um yeah. So she winds up getting like kind of I guess recruited by this guy Rob, played by Philip Winchester, who I'm liked in the show Strike Back. I think he's good. Just doesn't have very good material here. Well, no one does. Um, but yeah, when you talk about older guys, so his two BFFs are a guy named Baraka, African guy named actors Hoji Fortuna, and Sean Pertwee plays Danny. And this is the guy who played like Alfred Pennyworth on the Pennyworth show.
And
Um,
he was also the squad leader in Dog Soldiers.
oh, there you go. Yeah, he was. Yeah,
Yeah,
he has.
he was the guy with the sausages.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep, yep. And well, I have no problem with you know at all with guys up there in age doing action, but I just it was funny because that parking lot shootout. It's like, are you trying to? I was watching this and I was like, is everybody trying to like you know get everybody's attention? Because it's like usually in a parking garage, it's like you know how it echoes and everything. So every time this Sean Pertwee's Danny is like pulls out a gun, it's the same like Uzi. Now, first of all, it's like it's one of the smaller Uzis. Now, Uzis were like everywhere in '80s action films,
oh yeah.
everywhere. Okay, so yeah, I haven't seen him in a while. I'm like, oh, he's going retro with an Uzi. Okay, whatever. But like, he always has an Uzi on him, and even mini Uzis aren't that like mini, you know. And first of all, it's like, does anybody use silencers anymore? I was like,
They used him at the gate at the
yeah,
very end.
yeah,
But they were like it was almost like the gun that the Joker pull out of his pants at the end of Batman when he's shooting at
right,
the Batwing. Like, how
right.
long are these guns? Jeez. Oh,
But it's like that whole garage shootout thing is like, okay, I know this guy can't, you know, he's up there and he can't maneuver, and that's one of the reasons. If you're a bad shot, that's one of the reasons why you use an Uzi, because it just sprays, right? And he's going
mhm.
shh like a water hose, um, and it was just kind of ridiculous. I was so distracted by not just the way it was shot, but it seems like either they were making very they were going out of their way to make very little body movement or too much. They were like overcompensating, or just like, yeah, I'm just gonna lean over here and shoot, just whatever.
Well, on top of that, there's the awkwardness of the body language. Now, I've seen this in other movies, and I've seen this in, like, police dramas and things, and
Hmm.
I feel like it's an attempt to be accurate with the way people are supposed to hold and move guns if they're
Yeah,
actual professionals.
yeah.
I call it the Tyrannosaurus arm because they're, like, holding it really close to their
Right,
chest, and their elbows are out, and they're, like, maneuvering, right?
right, yeah.
It
Like,
looks really dumb, even if
why?
it's accurate and it's not cinematic, but everybody is doing it in this movie. I'm like, "Oh, look at the Tyrannosaurus arm." So I can't again, like you, I was distracted by what
Hmm.
it looks ridiculous. Now I understand going for accuracy is one thing, but you also have to go for cinema, I think at
Yeah,
some point.
yeah. And going back to the main character, who, again, this is the first time I've seen to that, at least from what I remember, Charlotte Kirk in anything, and um, she doesn't really like carry the movie in a compelling way.
Mm-mm.
I just, this movie made me think of, like, you know a movie like Atomic Blonde. Say what you will about that, but it's Charlize Theron. She knows how to hold your attention in a movie, not just because of the way she looks, but the way she acts and carries herself and everything. Um, but here it's just it it's a movie that kind of like thinks that you're automatically all in. It
Yes.
it doesn't really care about winning us over, really. It's just like, all right, you're on board with us, let's go. It's like,
Well, it's partially it's the I had thought we had moved past this in, but because it's been around for at least the last 5 years, but it's the badass female lead. Now, I have
mm,
no problem with badass female
sure.
leads. I have a problem with people who write them as if they are just the worst versions of the male action lead, which they think,
Mm.
"Oh, they're just supposed to be stoic and emotionless and yada, yada, yada." It's not interesting. And I was
Yeah.
thinking back to, like, my favorite, 1980s action movie guys like, Van Damme, Schwarzenegger, Stallone. Yeah, you could say they're kind of monosyllabic and they got their catchphrase and everything. But before they turn into the killing machines, you usually see them having a life and a relationship,
Hmm.
and they're kind of relaxed and casual. And, I know this might sound offensive, but they smiled. In this movie, she's this one note, she shows a kind of a vulnerability sometimes, but even that seems really strangely out of the blue. I'm like, "Yeah, you're tough. That's great. It doesn't mean I wanna spend time watching you for, 2 hours or care that your ultimate objective is you're in love with the head of an international diamond
Like,
smuggling, but, embezzling ring, and at the end, we're supposed to be happy because you wiped out the competition and handed over this international diamond embezzling ring to the best friend of your, spoiler alert, now dead boyfriend. I'm like, yeah, but it's still a giant criminal enterprise in which people are maimed and killed and exploited. Awesome.
yeah. I was really hoping that, like, at some point, this guy Rob would, you know, in the story there would be some kind of like flip the switch where he would betray her or something. Um, and also, I'm also like, I thought this would hopefully maybe be in the vein of like La Femme Nikita or something like that. It's just like, you're really rooting for not just, the heroine, the kick-ass action heroine, but somebody who's been wronged, and somebody who's been like who has something to fight for and go up against. But here it's like I I didn't feel in not only did I not feel invested in her, I didn't have anything really to root for, really,
Mm.
or hold my interest. It's like, mm. And yeah,
I mean, I think Rob was a more interesting character.
sure.
Although it's weird because Philip Winchester, I kept thinking, all right, there has to be a movie coming out where he plays the older brother to
Sean
Glenn
Bean.
Powell.
Oh, okay.
No,
Glenn
to
Powell.
Glenn Powell, because they look like
Kinda.
almost exactly the same, just like the guy, and I don't have the actor's name, I forgot, but he played Tom, the final boss, the heel at the end, right? Who looks a
Yeah.
lot like Tom Cruise. I'll put up a freeze frame during this that I took from the movie, and then put it next to Tom Cruise, I think from Minority Report, because they
Yeah.
look almost exactly the same. It's
Yeah. It
very
is.
strange.
It is funny. Yeah.
But I liked his character, and there was a thread going through the movie of, he was part of the Three Musketeers, this tight knit group of three guys.
Mhm.
And they were kind of navigating this underworld of different factions. But the rival groups saw him getting soft when he fell in love with Charlotte, aka Duchess. And during a pivotal scene, he's like, "Oh, you wanted you wanted to draw out the old Rob," and then something happens. Like, wow, that's pretty badass. But he
Mhm.
leaves the picture shortly thereafter, and we're left with I'll call it a blatant ripoff of a much better movie starring a female heroine that did everything right where this movie goes wrong. The Bride from Kill Bill.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Kill Bill Volume 1 opens up with the bride. What happens? She gets shot in the side of the head, and then she wakes up and she goes on a vengeance mission. What
Mhm.
happens in this movie? Duchess gets shot in the side of the head. It grazes her. The henchmen leave her for dead. Like, oh, we'll let the dogs get her. I don't know that I buy that
Yeah.
much, because you look at the body and there's not that much blood. So I'm like,
We'll
I
just
don't
throw her
think.
in the trunk. Drop
Yeah,
her
she
off.
starts kicking. Yeah. No, you feed her to the tiger, because that's they
Oh,
they did the
jeez.
rule. They did the rule of three on that one.
The
Hey, we see a
tiger.
tiger.
Yeah, this is one of those movies where the bad guys got to have a tiger in a pit. Um, man,
But it
yeah.
looked like it was in his living room. That was kind of cool.
It was like a literal den in a den.
Oh, man, and
Oh,
then, oh, get this. Hey, David, did you know that that Rob's contact, the big score, is named Charlie? But guess what? There's gonna be a scene where Scarlett says, "Charlie, who's he?" And then Rob gets to say,
he's a
"Charlie's
she.
a she." But
Yeah, played by
it
Stephanie
never ends.
Beacham. I it's like so that movie or that character rather, it made me think of like how much I appreciated Andy McDowell as Big Cat earlier this year in Red Right Hand, which is now on Hulu and a better movie. Um, it's just like I don't know. I mean, I almost wanted this movie to like be like a lot more like um, just like in my face as far as like these, I didn't feel, that these characters are very threatening or, you know, and it's not like we didn't really know much about them. We're just like, here's this person and exposition dump introduction, you know.
Exposition dump introduction in the gut that you said this movie is not in your face enough. I understand what you're saying, but like in terms of like telling you who these characters are, there's plenty in your
But
face,
yeah,
because
that's heavy
every
handed.
time
Yeah.
right, every time someone pops onto the screen, we get the freeze frame and the exposition,
Yeah.
the voiceover. I'm like, just move the story
Right.
along. There are ways to tell this story, and and use some of that time you might get back to tidy up the story. There's a scene where one of the brother of one of the rival guys tries to assault the maid in the compound.
Hmm.
And Scarlett walks in and sees this, and there's a scuffle. Guy gets killed. Again, spoiler alerts, I guess. Rob comes in and hands the maid like a fat wad of cash and
Yeah.
says, "Leave here and never come back." Cool. I don't know exactly how much time passed between the time we saw that between that scene and when they meet back up with the maid
Later
a
on.
little bit
Yeah.
later, right? But she apparently took that money. We'll say let's just say it's a week. She owns a bar now with a full-fledged hideout upstairs and contacts and all this other stuff. I'm like, no, pull
Mhm.
over.
This will be helpful later in the plot. Um, yeah, I don't know. And and there could have been a lot more to her character too. Um, but yeah, it's a movie that just wants to keep moving, but there's just really not a whole lot to get attached to. It's just like, okay.
But hey, if you want to see a guy get an iron to the balls, this is the film for you. I mean that's the other thing. Like, it's got this bizarre misandrous streak to it. There's all these kind of jabs at like, oh, the criminal underworld is the world of men, and we're gonna iron your balls and do all this like crazy stuff. I kept thinking like, if we were to change places and have one of these sadistic guys like try and cut off, Scarlett's breasts or something when she's tied up, like how would that look? It's just there's an ugliness to it, and it feels like an odd form of pandering. I know Marshall co-wrote this apparently with Charlotte Kirk, but there's a nastiness to it that you could take out and it wouldn't change anything about the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it could still be mean, without the nastiness and everything. But um, again, I just there's no feeling of like urgency or um, like stakes. Really, I mean, uh, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing really to this movie. It's yeah,
It's a movie that's meant to be watched once,
once, yeah,
maybe. Whereas
yeah,
a lot of the other films that we've talked about, we've probably watched, half a
yeah,
dozen times.
yeah,
Um, which is it's very unfortunate, and it goes back to I think about Dog Soldiers in particular. I mean, that was, I joked that Neil Marshall has to find the eye of the tiger. He's got to get hungry. Like, if you were to show me both these movies without the context of everything that happened in between, and
yeah,
said, who directed these? Was it the different people or the same person? Oh, it's got to be different people because there is no comparison here
yeah. I
aside from
mean,
sharing like one actor.
gosh, you put this next to The Descent. It's like, what? It's like, what happened here? Um, I don't know. I mean, I hope he finds his mojo back. But and that's why I mentioned this. I'm like, oh, new movie by Neil Marshall. Let's check it out. Okay, Hellboy. That was his last outing. Major outing. Um, so that was dealing with an established property. Let's see what he does with something, a little bit, that he could say is his own. But yeah, and overall, I mean, even like the end credits does that whole like stop motion thing where it's like introducing all the characters like over again. I'm like, yeah, I know. I just spent time with these guys. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I feel like this might be a short episode
I
because I
think
just
so too.
is
I don't know
is
what
there
else to say about this movie.
if
Um,
is there anything you can recommend? Because I feel like I'm looking over my notes because there
okay.
has to be something. Yeah, no, no. I
Okay.
do have one thing.
What do you got? What do you got?
At the end of the film,
Uh,
Charlotte is S- Scarlet. Sorry, not Charlotte. Scarlet doesn't matter.
or
She's
Duchess.
driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, Duchess. Yeah, she's driving away
Hmm.
in that green car,
Yeah.
and the guy who's I think it's the guy whose balls she burned off, and he seemed to recover so remarkably that he's able to ride a motorcycle.
Mhm.
Um, Oh, wait. Hold on. Let's rewind.
Okay.
Back to the beginning, or
Hmm.
sort of beginning. There's a fight, and Scarlett gets beaten up by her boyfriend,
Yeah.
and Rob finds her, and that's kind of like the beginning of their relationship.
Hmm.
He goes to see her in the hospital. She's badly beaten up, and she's got 2 cracked ribs.
Hmm.
Cut to them making violent, passionate love in their apartment,
That
like
was what the
an hour
doctor
later.
prescribed. What's really going to
Oh,
help in your recovery is passionate, close camera, love making.
yeah, take one of these and swallow, and you'll be okay. But no, the point, getting back to the end of the movie, uh, Scarlett is driving away in this car. The one of the other henchmen has found her,
Mhm.
planted a bomb in her car, and he is pursuing her on a motorcycle. And he pulls out this Wile E. Coyote detonator thing and blows up the car.
Yeah.
Now the car blows up, and we see it in flames. Like, oh my god, I can't believe they killed the main character at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a real surprise to anyone who's never seen movies before. But we cut
Mhm.
to Scarlett, I think, doing a voiceover explaining, like, "Oh, you thought that was me, did you? No, I'm fine." Um, she ducks and rolls from the driver's seat out, I guess, the passenger door in one very quick move.
Yeah.
Impossibly quick for someone who's got their feet on the gas while they're trying to do this, and they do this roll. But when they cut to the car coming into the frame so it's closer to the camera, it comes from the passenger side, and the passenger side door is closed.
Well, hmm. Yeah,
What?
you would think they would pick up on that. Um,
Or you might think that because he was traveling a little bit ways behind her, and yet he didn't see her roll out of the other side of the car, apparently because he's taken all by surprise when she turns around and punches him, and that's the end of the movie. She punches the camera. Yeah, it's
I
great.
think, and I'm not always into like reading other people's reviews and everything, but sometimes when you watch a movie that like, okay, what did I just watch? Sometimes you like need maybe, all right, let me just read a review and see if am I the only one here? And so,
Validation.
yeah,
I
yeah,
get
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, there's a film critic I follow a lot, Brian Orndorff, and his first paragraph is great. It's like, director Neil Marshall has spent the last 4 years of his career trying to turn his romantic partner, that answers my question, Charlotte
Oh,
Kirk, into a movie star. The pair have previously collaborated on The Reckoning and The Lair, which I mentioned before, 2 dreadful films, he says, and they return with Duchess, also claiming credit for the screenplay. Unlike their previous endeavors, the new offering isn't a horror experience. Well, it's maybe horrific, but a criminal one instead, with the couple going the Guy Ritchie route. Hey, the Guy Ritchie route with yet another study of British gangsters getting caught up in an underworld power play that require brute force to break. Duchess isn't an inspired intimidation game. And that would have been nice. Like some kind of like, betrayal, just kind of, psychological intimidation going on here, but no. Um, it's not an inspired intimidation game. And once again, Kirk can't carry the picture, offering flat work in the central role of a woman going to extremes while seeking revenge on those who killed her crook of a boyfriend. Marshall has nothing much to offer, relying on cliche and shots of a half naked Kirk to make it through this lifeless feature. Yeah, pretty much.
that does sum it up.
Yeah.
But it's tough because I almost, as much as I really don't like the movie, it's almost like I would imagine recommending this to people to watch, not as entertainment, but just as like some sort of a weird case study. Like, yeah, you can really start off promising and go horribly wrong if you're not careful. Because he's a smart filmmaker. He
He
cares
is.
about the craft. I can tell that much. So I'm just wondering what is going on here. Would he watch this movie again? or
Yeah.
or could he imagine watching, if he's a fan of this genre? I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say here because I'm very tired, but partially because I was watching this at 4 o'clock in the morning. This is how I
Oh.
started my day, David. I started my day with Duchess.
Oh boy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it a couple nights ago, and then I'm like, I barely remember it, and that which is not a good sign. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to have to say about this because, yeah, um,
I'll say I'll say that I can recommend another movie that's sort of in this vein, a film that I liked much more than this, even though I've found a couple of like scripty problems with it. I talked to Mark about it last night on the Spoiler Room.
mhm.
It's called The Damned Don't Cry from 1950, starring
Wow,
Joan Crawford.
wow,
And it's Joan Crawford, who is a woman who's trying to work her way up through an organized crime organization, kind of using her wits and feminine wiles
hmm
and cunning to sort of disastrous results. And I got to tell you, there are two action scenes in this movie
hmm
that rival. They're like 2 minutes long each, and they rival anything in this 2 hour experience. And you're talking about a movie that's almost 75 years old. It's crazy. Got to go back to the basics, I
wow.
guess.
That's
Yeah.
cool. The damned don't cry.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's pretty extraordinary, and Joan Crawford is extraordinary in it. And I think that's kind of what's missing is she's a woman who's very tough and very jaded and very ambitious, but she's also recognizably a person.
Right. Right.
She relates to people as you'd expect someone to relate. Oh, help me out. This is another detail. It drove me crazy. I didn't go back and look it up, although I should have. And then I promise we'll wrap up.
Mhm.
At the end,
Yeah.
during when Scarlett is being tortured, so I guess the climax, and she's facing off against not Tom
Got it.
Cruise.
Got to have a
Um,
torture.
right. Um, they could have just made her watch the dailies of this movie, but
Oh boy.
uh, there's group of like black clad MI6 looking guys with these these guns and scopes raid the compound and free our quote unquote heroes. It turned out it was her brother that was leading this group. Is that right? The guy who previously we saw just sitting on the couch playing video games all day. Did I miss something in
I,
his freeze frame where it's like, oh, he's an ex MI6 special agent that when he's not going around murdering people, he relaxes playing Xbox. I might have missed that bit of dialogue, but
that would have
it was
been
a real head scratcher.
that would have been awesome if that was established, but I did not pick up on that. And let's say that's actually what they had planned. I'm like, it's sad that neither of us or both of us are scratching our heads about that. It's like, was that a thing? It's like, hmm. um, yeah. Gosh, there's not a good movie here. Because sometimes you watch a movie and it's like, you know what? There's potential for a good movie here. And if they would have maybe did another rewrite or something else, um, but it's just the not even the foundation, the bones of this thing. It's not good.
It's a Frankenstein of a lot of other different, better movies. And I find myself asking this question kind of a lot, which is when I'm watching these movies that are, again, Frankenstein together from other better films,
Yeah.
why? Like, what is the filmmaker trying to get across? What is their stamp that they're putting on it? And when I can't see any kind of a voice at all, it just makes me wonder even harder because, like, yeah, this is a bad Guy Ritchie knockoff full of cliches from other films. Literally, you heard that dialogue that I recited earlier. So what's the deal? Is the hope that this will become someone's favorite action movie? It's not. It's not even going to be
Mm,
remembered as evidenced by you
mm.
2 days after you watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. I was waiting for like the Saban, titles to come up, and I'm like, okay, maybe that's good. But hey, we've seen some Saban movies that are better than this. So, whew, yeah.
Yeah. All
Come
right.
on, Neil Marshall. Take a break from your romantic partner and make something else.
Look, you can be in love with someone or involve and make movies with them, and that can be a beautiful thing. It's just not in this case.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I hate to say, go back to the well, make Dog Soldiers 2 at last, but yeah, I don't know.
Dog
He can
Soldiers
he can
2 at last.
Oh my goodness. That would have been cool if, like, instead of a tiger, it had been a werewolf, in the
That
cage,
would have been
that in the
awesome.
pit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the instant
Um,
instant extra 3 stars from me.
yeah. I
But,
mean, they made a Descent too, and he didn't come back for that smartly. So that's I never even saw it, but
yeah,
so I'm
I
like,
didn't
why?
see it either.
Yeah, why would I want to see it? I don't know.
Mm.
And so that's Duchess. Yeah,
Yeah.
Dutch us.
Now I'm thinking of Dutch, the character, Schwarzenegger's character from Predator, and I'm thinking about how I wanna watch that movie again.
Totally,
But
totally.
yeah. All right. Well, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, thank you for another sterling recommendation. And
Yep. Just got so
no,
many.
I'm just glad we could come together on this one because it's no fun like bickering. Well, it kind of is, but I like it when we can at least understand where
I
each other is coming from on a
I
movie.
swear, if one of us liked this movie, I really think it would be a big time test to our friendship. But or we'd really just have to be very concerned for the other person. But
Well,
um, yeah,
I would hope that be the case anyway.
yeah, it's true, true.
Anyway, but yeah, everybody out there, as we mentioned, you can rent this movie on VOD. I'm not sure exactly why you would, but and if you're in the UK, it's in cinemas. You don't have to go. And yeah, if you like this video, please like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And check out David's information at Keeping It Real. Will be down below in the description.
Yeah.
And David, thank you very much. And folks out there, until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thanks very much and take care.